Nigeria's ambassador to Sudan, Safi Olaniyan, has appealed to Nigerian citizens trapped in the ongoing war in Sudan to exercise patience with embassy officials as they work hard to ensure their safe evacuation. In an audio message released by the ambassador, he lamented the stalemate in the current efforts to evacuate citizens caught in the crisis in Sudan. Explaining that the fault is not from the Nigerian embassy, he cautioned especially students not to attack embassy officials and their families in retaliation.
I'm reaching out to you at this point on the issue of the buses that is creating tension everywhere. I just want to let you know that the embassy is not in charge of the bus contracts. We have not received any money from anybody to hire buses. We are only arranging the logistics. Those who are arranging the buses are the Ministry of Humanitarian as well in Nigeria, as well as NEMA. So our own is to get the necessary instruction that this and this has been arranged, and that we should give instruction to the students to meet at so and so place, and that's, you are aware, we have been doing. The present arrangement that appeared to have broken down was also midwifed in Nigeria. We are in contact with them to correct whatever is not right with the contract, because students cannot continue to live on the street. I want to assure you that we are as vulnerable as you are, and we are not going to leave until all of you have been moved to safety and to Nigeria. So I am urging you not to take any action like I am hearing that you are planning to attack the family of officers. The officers and myself, we are all as vulnerable as you are. We have no food like you, we have no water like you, we have no light like you. It's not that we are living in a different world. This is war, and it's not tourism. So what you are experiencing is what we are also experiencing. But I'm assuring you that everything that needs to be done is being done. And within a very short time, the issues will be resolved. With regard to those who are at the border of Egypt, the issue is for a security clearance to be issued for us, for the evacuees to be able to move across the Sudan border into the Egyptian border. All that need to be contacted in Nigeria are being contacted, for them to contact their counterparts in Egypt for this clearance to be issued. It is unfortunate it has not been issued, but be rest assured that within a very short time, all these things will become a thing of the past. Once again, I urge you to be calm and await the necessary development. Nobody is sleeping. We know that you are there because we are also here, and we are not going to leave you to your own fate. We are in this together, and we are not leaving until you have all left for safety and for Nigeria. So we are all waiting for the actions of the humanitarian ministry as well as NEMA in respect of the buses, and we are waiting for the actions of the authorities of Nigeria and the authorities of Egypt in respect of the clearance that is required to move the buses across the borders. Once again, my name is Ambassador Olaniyan. I'm with you all the way.
Right. You heard Ambassador Olaniyan there. Some very kind, forthright, but sad words as regards the condition in Sudan.
Yes, absolutely. And I must commend Ambassador Safi Olaniyan for his empathy and his very wise and measured message to the students and citizens of Nigeria who are currently trapped in Sudan, still trapped in Sudan. It's a kind of message, a reassuring message you would expect to hear from a leader, and no surprises there in terms, I mean, he's a diplomat, so he should know how to manage tense situations or situations that are less than favorable. So commended, thank you. And beyond that, the tone of that message absolves him of responsibility, or perhaps tries to explain to the students as well as Nigerians who really is to be held culpable for the challenges that have occurred. He talks about the fact that all that had been organized wasn't from his office. It had come from Nigeria, as it ought to be, because this is a national, it's a national response that's required. Now let's come back to what the response has been like. We have talked about this since last week in terms of the way that the Nigerian government has handled the evacuation of its citizens from war, crisis-ridden Sudan. Initially it was, okay, after a while had gone, Nigerians criticized the time he had taken. What we now hear is that Nigerians who have been moved from Sudan heading to the border of Egypt to be lifted by Air Peace Airline, which, by the way, has been given free by the chairman and founder of MD and founder of Air Peace, Mr. Allen Onyema. They are stranded. There are a number of stories around why they're being stranded, around diplomatic conversations with Egypt themselves, or the amount of money that Egypt is asking Nigeria to pay at the border for each person that they had to move. But aside that, is the welfare of the people. In a viral video, some students were seen to have said that they've been made to sleep under the buses or inside the buses. And so, since they're in the Sahara Desert, they're cold. I want you to imagine what the family members or the parents of these people are going through. Hearing that, unfortunately, their nation has failed them, quite simply put. They found themselves in a situation that's less than ideal, in fact, a horrible situation that could easily escalate into war, where some people have said it's already a warlike zone. And they've been abandoned despite the fact that they had hopes, and their hopes had been lifted by the government to say that we will look after you. Their hopes have been dashed. To make matters worse, they're being put through such a terrible situation despite what they must have faced in Sudan. It is a national disgrace. We must tell the truth. It is shameful, it is sad, but it's not surprising. It's not surprising because if you look at the things that have come out of Sudan, you would understand that it's not far from the things that we regularly hear back home in Nigeria. So why would you expect that overnight, when a crisis comes up, things will change? And I'm pointing this out so that we will understand our issues and begin to fix them, so that we don't wait for a crisis situation to begin to appear as a big brother. I asked the question, why don't we have diplomatic relationships with Egypt as other countries? As South Africa has evacuated 51 of its citizens, and according to the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, that's all the number of South Africans in Sudan. The first challenge we had was even ascertaining the number of Nigerians in Sudan. So we don't have an actual number, but guess what? Do we have an actual number of our citizens in Nigeria here? Have we been able to conduct a census in how many years? We just hazard guesses. Therefore, in terms of humanitarian response, disaster response, we are not able to fully manage it because we don't have the true picture of what we're really dealing with. Same thing in Sudan. The other issues in terms of the welfare of the people, we understand what happens to people even within Nigeria in conflict-prone areas who are left to their own fate, or perhaps to the hands of, international organizations or local charity organizations who look after them. We had to find a way to look at our own people. The Nigerian people must be priority, both internally and externally. At the end of the day, what we pray for is that these students, these Nigerian citizens, will be able to come back home safely to the arms of their family members.
Well, last Friday, when this subject came up about the distress being experienced by Nigerians who are stranded in the war situation in Sudan, I had raised the point that we will need explanation, that the Nigerian authorities must be transparent about the process. And over the weekend, there have been explanations from different directions. Let me start with Ambassador Olaniyon's appeal to the Nigerian students. Well, the information out there that we have is that aggrieved Nigerian students had, as Olaniyon himself pointed out, resolved that they will attack family members of embassy officials whom they thought were not helping them enough, particularly in Khartoum. Now, the ambassador has offered an explanation. But one part that is missing in that his appeal to the students is the allegation by the students that embassy staff were asking the students for a sum of $250. Is that true? If that is true, then well, that would be most strange indeed. But the clarification he has offered about the Ministry of Disaster and Humanitarian Affairs at the Nigerian end, back home, being responsible for the arrangements, well, that has been further confirmed by Dr. Sani Guazo, who is the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Disaster and Humanitarian Affairs, and also the chair of the Situation Room on the evacuation of Nigerians from Sudan. And he pointed out that they have issues of diplomacy, diplomatic issues. Contrary to the reports that we've been told, he insisted that, in fact, the Nigerian government had paid the bus drivers and that they did not have any issue in that regard through third parties with involvement, he claims, of the Department of State Services and the Nigerian Finance Intelligence Unit, the NFIU. Well, that's the statement, the explanation offered by Dr. Guazo. Third, over the weekend, a C-130 was dispatched with 14 crew members and 2 passengers with food, water, food aid to head towards Aswan in Egypt. But I've seen a statement that is in circulation, although it is unsigned, titled Situation Report, in which, the NAF officers were saying that, look, this was supposed to be, a one-stop movement, pick up the stranded Nigerians, drop them back home, and then go back and pick more. But now they themselves are stranded at the airport. In fact, they are having to pay for every opportunity, every moment they are in that airport to the Egyptian authorities, who in fact restricted them to their aircraft and will only allow them to just go to the lounge to refresh and go back into the aircraft. Okay, these are the three-pronged explanations that we have seen so far. But all these explanations, don't seem to make sense. For as long as Nigerians are stranded there, as long as they are in distress, as long as our people are at risk in that country, that is indeed most unfortunate, and that is unacceptable. Now, many Nigerians there have also alleged that Egypt is collecting from them $28. The Sudanese are collecting from them $5 or so. Now, the question to ask is this. All this talk about, the Egyptians are requiring visa and all of that. The Indians have been able to evacuate 3,000 persons. The British have been able to evacuate 1,888. Other countries, have also evacuated their own people, including Iran, that evacuated 82 persons, and the US, about 1,000 persons. So why was it easy for these other countries to evacuate, and an African country like Nigeria cannot do so? The question is, what happened to the idea of unity, African unity? If it was, a Western country that did this to Nigerians, we will be claiming racism. But this is an African country treating Nigerians in distress and other Africans. There are other Africans that are also affected in this manner. And where is the African Union in all of this? So we would like to see a situation where the African Union gets involved. African regional economic bodies should also get involved to call on Egypt to make it easier for our people to come back home, because this is war already. Third week, the ceasefire has already ended, and the warring parties are not, they are not willing to stop the crisis. Everybody is at risk, including the Sudanese themselves.
My most important priority and prayer, and if I have one request to make to God Almighty this morning, is that, dear God, make our student come back safe and alive. We can deal with the massive incompetence and shenanigans of our government afterwards. But God in heaven, and please pray with me, make our student come back safe and alive. Now let me go to the shenanigan. Everybody failed. Everybody across government failed. The first question we should ask is, was the execution properly planned? No. NEMA ought not to be putting in for a military evacuation like this. There has to be a holistic board set up with national security advisor, intelligence agencies, and different diplomatic attaches weighing the situation in Sudan. The UK had something called a Cobra meeting where every line in the security architecture will sit and they'll execute a plan. The plan failed because obviously they didn't envisage that Egyptians were going to shut their border. Was that the best possible route? There were many other routes there. There was Djibouti, there was the port of Sudan, which some of the officials that are now on ground are saying might probably be a better route. Because through the port of Sudan, they've evacuated over 3,000 people. That's what Saudi Arabia has done. So was the idea to get buses to Egypt the best available option? We should have intelligence officers and diplomatic intelligence attaché with the embassy in Sudan. And there must have been a very cohesive force. So what I envisage the government should do this morning, should set up a cross-mix of various teams, NEMA, Foreign Ministry, the military intelligence unit, and they sit to recalibrate plan. Secondly, what should be done? Try as much as possible to de-escalate tensions. If possible, we need to raise more money. I know NEMA gave account. They said they spent $30,000 on every bus there. For the 40 buses, only 13 came. They released $400,000 first. If possible, de-escalate tensions. Can we have a system where at least we cater to those that are stuck at the border till we get them off the border? Also, make contingency planning for the NAF Hercules C-130 that is stuck there, that the Egyptians are collecting landing fee for every day. And can we also recalibrate our plan and look at other options? Can we shift to Port of Sudan to be able to evacuate from there? That's another line of action. Fourthly, can we have a reporting channel that directly goes to the heart of the presidency where we can monitor minute-by-minute accounts? And fourth, and lastly, can people that know nothing about the evacuation stop coming to address people on Twitter about the evacuation? Because in 24 hours now, they've not been able to say anything because this was beyond their brief in the first place. Now, people should take responsibility. The situation had escalated in Sudan. A tribal crisis has ensued. I was seeing some very, very debilitating reports coming out yesterday. Even South Sudan is already feeling the heat. The World Food Program can't get food into South Sudan any longer. A lot of ethnic tensions. We have dropped the ball, but this is not the time to criticize. The most important point is how can we get our students back home? When we get back home, we'll deal with ourselves internally. But if I have a wish, like I said before, my prayer is, God, whatever it will take, let our students come back home. The Western Delta University of Gara, Etiop West local government area of Delta State, rarely had it so good as it did this weekend, as hefty monetary donations and offers of sundry help tumbled in at the 15th Founders Day celebration and lecture. Chairman of This Day and Arise News Channel, President Gwang Baigana, opened the financial floodgates as he announced a donation of $1 billion on behalf of the broadcast station to Western Delta University to set up media and technology school to help enhance schools' development. At the same event, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the just concluded election, Mr. Peter Obi, and immediate past governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Fayemi, both agreed to become visiting lecturers in the Western Delta University, WDU, Ogara, Delta State. All right, a lot to say about this. Congratulations to Arise. Arise leads the way.
Yes, we lead the way. Yeah. Congratulations. Not a lot to say here. The details of the story in terms of yesterday was a grand day for the Western Delta University, as you've mentioned, in Ogara, Etiop West local government area of Delta State. But very importantly is that the Arise Media Group, led by its chairman, Prince of our Kingdom, Prince Nduka Obaigbena, led the donations in terms of giving back to education. I think one thing that was very important to note is the diversity of political leanings in the hall and the fact that they came together for a good cause. The visitor to the university, Chief James Ibori, who is in himself a leader in terms of in politics and in governance. So he was able to bring together a select group of people from different parties. We had Prince Ele Momodu, who is the PDP spokesperson. We had Mr. Dr. Fayemi, who was one of the speakers. We had Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party. Fayemi is of the APC, and of course we had the neutral there in terms of representing media. And they spoke quite finely in terms of the topics before them and also in terms of giving back. I think it's very important to mention that at this point, leaders and politicians should begin to think about legacy. When you're gone, what would you be known for? What would your name represent? What are you putting down where you have been able to enjoy the benefits and the blessings of God? What are you going to give back to the people? I think it's very commendable, and congratulations to the Western Delta University.
First of all, the donation by the chairman of Arise News, Prince Nduka Obagbena, is clearly an expression of Arise News as a socially responsible institution. As a media house, the job we do here is to inform people, to educate people, to join others within the public sphere to set agenda for national development. And here you have Arise News, through its chairman, saying that intellectual development is very important. And the company is pledging a sum of 1 billion naira to set up, a school of media and technology. Of course, technology now is right at the center of the media, and that's where the future is. So it's also a future-looking, kind of contribution, realizing, of course, this interconnect between media and technology. And it would be good to have, such a school at the Western Delta University. That's number one. Number two is to commend the founder of the university, Chief Onanefe Ibori. Many people did not even know that, he had a university, but this gives publicity to that school and will draw attention also to that school. And the fact that the school has been there for 15 years. And it's good that we have the example of Chief Ibori showing interest in education. There are many other persons in this society who are committed to education. Bankers, like the founder of Zenith Bank, lawyers like Chief Afeba Balola, business mogul like Chief Aliko. I say Chief Aliko, well, maybe one day he'll get a chieftaincy title. Alaji Aliko Dangote, who has built structures across many institutions around the country. You have so many examples like that of persons who have made donations. Chief Adebutu, Sake Sintin Adebutu, who is also known as a major donor to worthy causes. So Arise News and Prince Nduka Obagbena, in doing this, joins this distinguished, class of Nigerians who value education. And if there is any challenge that we have in this country, is education. Because we have a crisis in education. So philanthropy in the direction of education would help to begin to recreate the future, in Nigeria, particularly now that many public universities are down and out, and private initiatives have become very attractive. Congratulations also to the university on its 15th Founders Day anniversary.
Right. Kudos to Prince Nduka Obagbena, a trailblazer, a visionary, a man that sees tomorrow, today. Because the best legacy you can leave behind is education. And the fact that people that will come out of that Arise School of Media and New Technology will blaze the trail in the media sector in Nigeria 20, 30 years from now, will revolutionize the landscape. And it will be said that the donation of the prince himself from Owa Kingdom started that revolution. It's really heartwarming. A man that gives to education is a man that gives to the future. Pretty much reminds me of the story of Mr. Harvard when he was about to die and he left a little will of $400. That made the bulk of the first endowment fee for what is known to be Harvard University today. And when you look at all the world leaders that have gone through Harvard, they still make reference to that initial $400. This $1 billion donated by the Rise and these day founder Prince Nduka Obagbena will be spoken about over 100 years to come as a small step that led to the giant leap for mankind. Kudos, right on.